few things for our next code that starts on January 1st of next year. So we have a new residential and commercial building code, and as part of that energy code starting on January 1st. So there's only a couple of kind of changes, but I'll turn it over to Curt to give us kind of the update.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, yeah.
Am I correct that South Carolina took the requirement for fresh air ventilation out of their code for new residential construction?
Stacy, do you know that one?
The builders lobbied to have it removed. and
Probably.
It got removed.
It's usually the first thing they go.
If I was a betting man.
Unofficial answer
It's
is
still in the
probably.
code for North Carolina and will be next year, correct?
The environments in North Carolina and South Carolina are very different on the energy code side. That is well known.
Actually, there's no requirement for fresh air ventilation in residential homes in North Carolina. There's not going to be in the new code either.
There isn't.
Nope. That wasn't changed. Now, it's in the IECC, but to my knowledge, they still have not added it to the new code.
So that's fresh air ventilation, but not like
Now, if you take
leakage or
a,
whole house leakage or anything.
now, if you go for programs, you know, there might be program requirements, but North Carolina itself does not. And have you heard anything different, Ron?
That's it. It's usually the first sacrificial lamb of negotiations.
Now, it was probably proposed initially.
So does this house have fresh air ventilation?
Energy Star requires it.
And is it through an ERV or is it just raw air?
It's through an April air, and this particular house, I believe, I haven't been up to the attic yet, but I believe it's through an April air ventilation.
ERV?
No,
No, it's
No, it's-
central fan
yes,
system. And
right, yeah, their thermostat basically can switch on and off obviously the central fan, the central furnace fan, and also switch on and off an outside air device that brings in outside air through a filter into the return side of the duct system. So it runs those two together to, at periodic intervals to make sure it meets the ASHRAE
I'm
requirements.
sorry, but I just got a question. How does it know when to turn that? What is it based on?
Time.
CO2, just time?
It's just the
Well, it uses the
Bare
ASHRAE,
minimum.
it uses the
Yeah.
ASHRAE
it
chart.
just uses the ASHRAE simple calculation method.
Bedroom plus one,
Exactly.
That's how you
Square
size
foot
it,
times
but-
0.01 number of bedrooms plus 1.
that's how you size it, but is there a standard for how long it has to run?
Yeah.
There is?
Yes.
Yeah, it's in there. Yeah, depending on your CFM, the time requirement.
That simplified formula gives you the CFM if you're running it continuously. And Energy Star in North Carolina, they don't really have necessarily a spec on how frequent you have to run that. So let's say, for example, for this house, it's 50 CFM if it runs all day long. Well, if we only want to turn it on, for 30 minutes out of every hour instead of 60 minutes, we could run it at 100 CFM for 30 minutes instead of 50 for 60 minutes.
Is it bathroom control, for instance? Is there a timer, 20, 40, 60-minute timer in the bathrooms?
No, it's all built into the thermostat.
Okay.
Now, I will see the trend I'm seeing is more contractors, at least on the houses that get a Hurd rated, are providing fresh air one way or another. I think just as a good practice, but I think the most common either exhaust only through a fan or bringing in fresh air through the return of the HVAC system. But Energy Star will not allow you to do it through the system unless it's mechanically driven time and control. Where most houses I'm seeing don't have that, it can't just be a
It's
damper.
sort of a passive.
It's gotta be controlled through.
So if you come to this
Independently.
house, you're dumping, let's say in August, it could be 95-degree air into the system, and it's not being going through an ERV, so you're not capturing any of that exhaust energy that's going back out.
No.
So that has to have an impact on the efficiency of the house.
Absolutely.
Yep, it does.
Ventilation will
there's
reduce
a lot of
overall
trade-offs.
efficiency. Yep. And a lot of the devices, I'm not selling April Air or anything necessarily, but a lot of the devices out there, they do have a temperature lockout. So you can cut that ventilation off when it exceeds or goes below whatever your window is, and then that device is smart enough to know to make it up later with increased runtime. So in the summer, maybe it cuts off during the hottest part of the day. It makes up those runtime hours at night.
Okay, good.
we can still bring it in the community.
Yeah, it's not perfect.
Yep.
These houses, I guess that's a good segue into talking about these houses.
Yeah.
These homes, for example, are, you know, we're talking about things that they're doing in here that are above kind of the bare minimum. These homes are using 15 SEER equipment with variable speed. So we know that that's gonna play a big role in helping to control the humidity, during, you know, more humid times of the year. So, that's just kind of one of the little things they had to do. And I don't know that this house is a great example, but maybe even across the street, if we can go look at another house, we can take you in the attic and show you where the ventilation system is, what that looks like, and how it's operating. This is a model house, so they're always done just a little different than some like a standard production house right across the street.
So when you say variable speed, you're saying that the blower
The blower.
capacity goes down as the load goes down.
It is a fixed capacity, but a variable speed blower. So single stage, single speed, outdoor compressor, but the speed of the air handler fan will drop as you're kind of at your set points. Yeah, it's not a variable capacity system.
So,
Alright, so back to code.
what are we expecting?
After about 2 years, many miles traveled, many meetings, several hours,
Hard work.
hundreds, thousands of hours,
On behalf of our members.
going back and forth in negotiation, not much has changed. But there are a few key points. So with duct testing, right now the threshold for total leakage is 6%, that's gonna drop to 5. Total, or leakage to outside still is 4 as an option to pass if you don't pass total leakage. Exterior house wraps now have to be taped at the seams. They weren't before, but that's a fairly cheap.
It's a win.
Yeah, it's a win, but, so if you use Tyvek or an exterior house wrap, the seams have to be taped now. They never did before. So all your perimeter and your seams have to be sealed up. Except for the bottom, I think you still gotta allow moisture to drain.
And Curt, question, because wasn't this part of the trade-off of, were we doing performance testing or fully sealed envelope? Is that kind of it?
Kind of,
Yeah.
and
There
was some independent data that supported this too.
Yeah.
And the cost of doing it is so cheap that it was an easy sell.
So there's trade-offs in the energy code process. Do you want more of this, then you have to have maybe less of this. And one of the things that we're interested in is getting to required third-party testing, really meaning HERS ratings, which in the new code is called an energy rating index. It's an option to get to energy code, but we believe in that, and so the powers that be, as part of the committee that was working on this, kind of looked at a trade-off and said, I think we'll do a couple of other things, and then maybe in the future we'll get to required HERS ratings. So.
Fenestration values and insulation values changed some, mostly for zone 3. Zone 3 went from R13 to R15 in the walls, from R30 to R38 in the attic. The HVAC of North Carolina has challenged that and successfully had that voted to be rolled back to current code. There was a procedural issue, so right now that's in limbo. We fully expect HVAC to reintroduce rolling back the code to 2012. Their justification was initially that it cost too much. Now they're using the fact that, well, from a study that App State did for DOE, it showed that we didn't have that great of compliance, which was probably around 80% compliance. So why are we upping the code if we're not doing it right now? Of course, that doesn't work for zone 4, zone 5, who are already at higher standards than that. Anyway, we fully expect them to ask for that rollback again. The procedural issue was something to do with an error in printing of the original code. So when they submitted the change, it had that error in it, which didn't provide public comment on what the real change is. So now they got to go through the whole process again. And then, as Brian mentioned, ERI option is now available versus prescriptive option for code compliance. Well, will be 2018 code, for those that don't know, begins in 2019.
And it's based on 2015 IACC, backed off a little
roughly.
bit.
You can go to the Department of Insurance website and look at the actual IECC document. That's how they developed this code. They didn't develop the code from the 2012 North Carolina code. They took the IECC code and edited it, and there's a lot of red. It's kind of interesting to see. Yes.
So I remember something was out there about we won't be able to do a default to the national res check as far as trade-offs and insulation value.
I haven't heard any discussion about that.
I thought there was
My understanding was that res check was still going to be viable, but I
The
have not heard any further
problem
discussion.
is that when you get so far away from the international code
Right.
and you're customizing your own code, which we do in North Carolina as we do in South Carolina, Georgia, all the southeastern states have a tendency to do this, then the federal software, the federal money that goes into building ResCheck as a tool that's being used, they have to then pay a lot of money to figure out your North Carolina code and then change the software so that it can be used.
Mhm.
And they told us at the upfront of the process, if you guys in North Carolina collectively change your code and mess with it so much, we're not going to offer ResCheck or ComCheck for you. So I agree with Curt. I don't think we have a definitive answer on that quite yet, but we are meeting with the Department of Insurance on April 11th or 10th, April 11th, I believe, in Raleigh, and we've got a laundry list of questions and opportunities that we're going to go over with them, and that's one of them.
Yeah, 'cause any of the insulators doing spray foam are gonna be going through the roof.
That's
'Cause
right.
I'm sure they don't do R38 spray foam.
They are not doing R19.
And most of those don't pass res checks now. They go through a different process of passing a performance-based code instead of passing the UA trade-off code.
So that's through your,
I don't know if is that allowed in that might be what.
It is not specifically allowed in North Carolina. So
Yeah,
here's
so
one other
that's
change
what I
that's coming.
thought.
Yeah, the performance base is probably, I don't know that it's been allowed in the new code.
Yeah. Well, ERI is going to be based on your
Yeah,
performance.
that's true, that's very true. Yes.
But there's a minimum of prescriptive you have to meet
To do
regardless if you
Uh,
go there or not. So for those who work in multiple areas might realize that code compliance or code enforcement is not exactly equal across the board. Even in North Carolina, we might think we're good. Department of Insurance has requested between 5 to 10 employees to be state level
New
employees, state level inspectors with the sole purpose of going from municipality to municipality to make sure code is enforced equally across the state. By North Carolina code, you cannot ask for more or less than what is stated in the state code as an official. That's black and white. There is no question about that. Now, it happens, but by law, you cannot ask for any more or any less. Now, the good thing about it is it will make it easier for people to do work in multiple counties and multiple municipalities to know what to expect from the code officials. We think it's going to open some eyes maybe on how bad some self-governed tests are and maybe help drive third-party testing. Right now, if you're not familiar, if you're doing duct testing, you can be the permit holder, the GC, the builder, the HVAC contractor, a HERS rater, an engineering professional, or
Home
BPI
inspector.
analyst. I think that covers about
Home
everybody.
inspector?
Home inspector.
Yeah.
Home inspector can do it too. So basically, if you're pulling a permit, you can test your own ductwork. If you're installing your own system, you can test your own ductwork. And I know there's very good HVAC contractors that are doing it right. There's also ones that are pre-printed certificates before they ever get out to the home site and don't own a piece of equipment. So we've got the full gambit going. So some way there has to be enforcement, whether it's through third-party testing or through code enforcement. Someone's got to help with that. So the other thing we got to remember on ERI is the equivalent of a HERS index. ERI is the generic code term for energy rating index. HERS is a path to get there. It's the equivalent score. Right now, generally speaking, hers is the only way to get there. But hers is proprietary to ResNet. The market will probably grow soon. There will be other players besides hers and ResNet. If you're talking the builders or your marketing, the industry needs to start talking in ERI. Everybody's used to hers, but ERI is the universal term. That's what's going to be in the code book. That's what everybody's going to refer to. So when you start having conversations, the language of the industry kind of needs to change to ERI and away from hers. Hers is a way to get your ERI.
And just to make sure we're clear on that, because he's right, when we talk as an industry, we need to be talking about ERI, because that's what's in code. But for folks that are interacting with homeowners and consumers, and we're trying to market the benefits of high-performance, green, energy-efficient homes, whatever you want to call it, hers is still a label, it's still a program that has good uptake. 30% of new homes in North Carolina have a hers rating. So just to be clear, there's kind of our consumer speak, and then there's our industry speak, which is kind of transitioning to ERI, with hers being one of the ways to get that.
Is the code, is it now, or will it?
January 1st.
Will it require a rating at some point for all homes?
Well, no, well, not yet.
Yeah,
It's-
our
Is that
goal,
something you want to see happen?
yes, our goal is to see that in 2021. And so we've already crafted legislation to basically do that, and either we do it through the Building Code Council, we have a 6-year cycle now, so we're not gonna see a major code change until 2024. And we're still gonna be working from the baseline 2015 backed off a little bit. We're gonna try to carry that forward a little bit, so that in the middle of our 6-year code cycle, being 2021, we would see some changes come about, which we would like to include required third-party testing for ducts and whole house leakage.
Historically, it's very difficult to get energy code brought up to current standards in North Carolina.
So-
By requiring a HERS index, you could let competition make it happen organically, as opposed to requiring it through code.
And one way, if you support such things, improving energy efficiency and minimum requirements and creating more opportunity for programs and things like that, is to actually get involved in the process of becoming a policy advocate. So we have a policy plan that we released last November. We sent recommendations, 2 letters to the governor's office and also to the Energy Policy Council on Friday, and suggested that they put in more support for energy efficiency code requirements. And so we'll be doing a residential lobby day on May 31st in Raleigh. Everybody is welcome to come. We're gonna go meet with legislators and talk to them about the benefits of high performance and energy efficiency, and get people there to tell their stories. We'll be doing commercial energy code and energy advocacy the day before on May 30th. And then there's quarterly meetings at the Code Council where Curt and I, Curt always, me sometimes, we go to those meetings, but the best thing is to have folks like you all here to be there telling the story of how energy code and building code matters, how we can do it in a cost-effective manner, and then provide a good return to the homeowners that is not so much of an expense to the building community that homes become not affordable. And there is a way to do that, and we need to educate the Building Code Council and other stakeholders, including legislators, about how to do that.
Is the, so will blower door testing be mandatory in the new code?
Nope,
No.
not required at all. It's a performance option through the ERI.
So 2021, that's our target.
So there are a couple things that, and they're legitimate worries. So for code, for duct testing and for blower door testing, what if we require it and somebody 80 miles outside of Elizabeth needs something done? Who's going to go out there and do it?
Right.
That's a legitimate concern, but I believe that if there's a money-making opportunity, somebody's going to resolve that. So our resolution was, well, all right, require it in 2020, not 2019. Give them a little bit of a lead time to bring things up. It's in Florida, they're resolving that issue. They require blower door testing and duct testing in Florida, and the same concerns were there, and somehow magically people figured out a way to make money at it, and they're all there, and there's people there to do it. There's people driving from out of state to do it. They can find a way. So that's, it was a legitimate concern. The other thing with blower door was, well, what happens when they fail? The house is done, you're 2 days from closing, what do we do? And we think we've come up with a resolution for that. combination of a checklist and a monetary cap for what you do. The question is, if someone keeps on repeatedly failing, what do you do? You know, it's easy to say, all right, one house failed, let's figure out a way through this. Your 15th house, maybe there's gotta be a little something you wanna do.
Okay. All right, so we could talk about this all day long, or we can see some of it in action. So I know Stacy's here to see what a blower door test looks like, right?
Yes.
Maybe some other folks as well. So I'm going to say let's keep thinking about some questions and some topics that we do want to talk about. But we've got our hosts here, Sam and Susie from Performance Point, and so they're going to actually walk through the process of how to do blower door testing, and then talk about some of the benefits and some of the ways that you work with builders, and then we'll be able to answer some questions about how load calcs happen and things like that. So I'll probably bring these questions with us as we're going along, and Sam, you want to take it over from here?
Sure. If you guys could give me 2 minutes to set up the blower door apparatus, then I'll be happy to pick up from there.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll get Sam